I'm Jason Mayden, senior footwear designer for brand Jordan and the lead designer on the Air Jordan 2009. You know, design process is interesting because it starts off with a series of questions, and usually the first question is why. It's like, why do athletes perform the way they perform today, and how can we push the athletes' performance to the next level in the future? So working with premier athletes like MJ, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, Derek Jeter, they always help us get those answers for those questions. So one of the things we wanted to do going into the Air Jordan 2009 was to define something different about MJ's career that consumers may not actually look at, and that's his defense. When you think about his career, everybody remembers the highlights of jumping from the free throw line and scoring 63 points and, you know, and doing what he did when he had the flu. But nobody ever stops to say MJ was a tenacious defender, and that's actually how he was able to dominate offensively. So we wanted to capture his defensive spirit in the product, and the first challenge he threw out to me was make a shoe that's defensively minded, but at the same time it can be used for offense. So I looked at sports that both were defensively based and offensively based, and the ideal sport was fencing, primarily because it's a martial art. And so in any martial arts, it's based on footwork, it's based on defense, it's based on manipulating the space between yourself and an opponent. So when you think about how the sport of fencing translates to basketball, it's easy. It's all about the inches. It's all about getting inside that mental space and physical space and dominating in the small area. In fencing, you know, the runway is very small. So basically, you have to understand your opponent's body and where they are in space, and then anticipate their movements. Just like basketball, it's physical chess. So when MJ would actually play defense, he would put his hand on people's hips and move them to where he needed them to be to execute the next steps of his plan. He was very divisive in his attack, but at the same time, it was purposeful. You know, MJ was one of those defenders that came to the game ready to shut somebody down, not only physically but mentally. So what we did is we initially started to do sketches and research and look at technologies that can help you be a better defender, because one of the things that you need that's essential to defense is being able to get to the ball quicker, being able to propel forward quicker, and being able to react quicker. So we looked at different foam compounds, we looked at different types of carbon fiber constructions, we looked at different plastics, we looked at different leathers, and it just kept coming back up. You know, the conversation around propulsion and how that can help your defense. And then I saw a special on CNBC about something that April Holmes was doing, and it dawned on me like, wow, you know, there goes an athlete who overcame tremendous obstacles, but at the same time dominates in her sport. And when you look at how her prosthesis running leg functions, it functions exactly the way we needed it to in order to be a better defender. It gives her that bounce, propels her forward, and it also keeps in contact with the ground. So what we did was we actually got a physical sample of her prosthesis. We examined it. We looked at the carbon fiber compound. We looked at the angle in which it was constructed. And we tried to replicate that as best as possible within our product. So what we did is we started off literally having two carbon fiber plates, almost like in a flipper construction, that looked just like her prosthesis. And we wanted to see how it held up under extreme stress, how it held up over long term, how it performed in, for larger guys and smaller guys, quicker guys, defensively minded guys, and we started to build from there. Like MJ, we had numerous conversations going back and forth over the length, over the width, and one of the things he was adamant about is that it has to perform when somebody's cutting at an angle. So that was a conversation that took about 7 months in the process, was being able to cut on an angle and really utilizing the heel and keeping part of the heel in contact with the ground, but allowing the rest of the shoe to actually move with your foot. So in essence, by limiting the amount of mass that the foot is moving, you're cutting down the reaction time, and you actually get to the ball quicker. After that process, there were numerous back and forth between, figuring out how the innovation was going to come to life. And then once we decided on the technical aspects and the performance aspects, then we brought in the aesthetic. MJ's a real big fan of making sure that it functions first and then letting the aesthetic come second. That's something I've learned from Michael. That's something I've learned from Tinker. That's something that I've seen in the industry of design in general. And with this product in particular, MJ felt since the technology was very forward thinking, that we should have a very quiet, confident aesthetic. So that's once again how we played into fencing with the satin pleats. That's something that comes directly from the sophisticated, elegant world of fencing. The clean white look, the ventilated mesh that's on the tongue and in the back of the shoe. It all plays off the fencing detail, but at the same time, it brings a sophistication to it that helps drive the overall uniform aesthetic. One of the things with the APT that's crucial is how it interacts with the chassis as well. So in particular, we wanted to create a rigid structure but still have flexibility where you need it. So throughout the arch, we have a carbon fiber plate that cuts down on plantar fasciitis, but then we also have this TPU chassis, which is created in a way that allows for the foam to compress so that you activate the system when you need it. But then if you're just around the house lounging, it's still a comfortable shoe, so you don't compromise comfort for performance. They go hand in hand. One of the key elements on the Air Jordan 2009 is that it's the first and only shoe to have a feature on there that's unique to each individual pair. So when you buy the shoe, the left shoe is different from the right shoe. No person in the world has the same pair as you. So basically, you're getting a custom experience each time. And that's something that I think our consumers look forward to. They don't want to be like the rest of the people who buy the Air Jordans. They want to have something special about them. And we wanted to provide that this time and really think from a consumer standpoint of what customability and what one-of-one really means. Going into the overall upper of the shoe, it's all about the fit and the form and the shape, because when you cut down on the amount of movement inside of the shoe, you actually cut down on the amount of injuries, because a lot of guys get injured because they move too much within their footwear. We've added pads inside of the heel to lock in the Achilles, to lock the heel down, and what that does, that cuts down on the ankle roll. In basketball, most of the injuries come from people landing on top of someone else's foot, especially in the NBA. That's 90% of ankle injuries. But if you can lock the heel down, you get more control in the footwear, so you can cause less sprained ankles that as a result of cutting too fast or the footwear failing. We want the shoe to be part of the foot itself. And finally, just the overall considered aspects of the shoe. We looked at throughout the process how we can use recycled materials, green tanneries. We looked at how to cut the pattern so that it was efficient and it wasn't wasteful. We looked at using premium materials, but they didn't have to hurt the environment to get there. So the process in itself took around almost 2 years, from first initial concept of just thinking about what the shoe could be, all the way up to confirming it for production.